Genesis 1, verses 20 through 23. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Henry's Commentary. Each day hitherto has produced very noble and excellent beings, which we can never sufficiently admire. But we do not read of the creation of any living creature till the fifth day, of which these verses give us an account. The work of creation not only proceeded gradually from one thing to another, but rose and advanced gradually from that which was less excellent to that which was more so, teaching us to press towards perfection and endeavor that our last works may be our best works. It was on the fifth day that the fifth fish and fowl were created, and both out of the waters. Though there is one kind of flesh of fishes and another of birds, yet they were made together, and both out of the waters. For the power of the first cause can produce very different effects from the same second causes. Observe 1. The making of the fish and fowl at first, verses 20 and 21. God commanded them to be produced. He said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly," not as if the waters had any productive power of their own, but "let them be brought into being, the fish in the waters and the fowl out of them." This command he himself executed. God created great whales, and so on. Insects, which perhaps are as various and as numerous as any species of animals, and their structure as curious, were part of this day's work, some of them being allied to the fish and others to the fowl. Mr. Boyle, I remember, says he admires the Creator's wisdom and power as much in an ant as in an elephant. Notice is here taken of the various sorts of fish and fowl, each after their kind, and of the great numbers of both that were produced. For the waters brought forth abundantly, and particular mention is made of great whales, the largest of fishes, whose bulk and strength exceeding that of any other animal, are remarkable proofs of the power and greatness of the Creator. The express notice here taken of the whale above all the rest seems sufficient to determine what animal is meant by the Leviathan, Job 41:1. The curious formation of the bodies of animals, their different sizes, shapes, and natures, with the admirable powers of the sensitive life with which they are endued, when duly considered, serve not only to silence and shame the objections of atheists and infidels, but to raise high thoughts and high praises of God in pious and devout souls. Psalm 104:25, and so on. The blessing of them, secondly, in order to their continuance. Life is a wasting thing. Its strength is not the strength of stones. It is a candle that will burn out, if it be not first blown out. And therefore the wise Creator not only made the individuals, but provided for the propagation of the several kinds. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply," verse 22. God will bless his own works and not forsake them, and what he does shall be for a perpetuity, Ecclesiastes 3:14. The power of God's providence preserves all things, as at first his creating power produced them. Fruitfulness is the effect of God's blessing and must be ascribed to it. The multiplying of the fish and fowl from year to year is still the fruit of this blessing. Well, let us give to God the glory of the continuance of these creatures to this day for the benefit of man. See Job 12:7 and 9. It is a pity that fishing and fowling, recreations innocent in themselves, should ever be abused to divert any from God and their duty, while they are capable of being improved to lead us to the contemplation of the wisdom, power, and goodness of him that made all these things, and to engage us to stand in awe of him, as the fish and fowl do of us. My translation. Then God said, "May the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures and winged animals on the earth, flying across the face of the expanse of the heavens." So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to its kind, and every winged animal according to its kind. Then God saw that it was good. So God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and may winged animals multiply on the earth." So there was evening and morning the fifth day. The word used here for great sea creatures is used later in the Old Testament in the story of the Exodus. The staff that Moses throws down in front of Pharaoh becomes a serpent, the very same word as the great sea creatures here in Genesis. And Pharaoh's magicians throw down their staffs as well, and their staffs became serpents, this same word again. but Aaron's serpent eats up the serpents of Pharaoh's magicians. In other words, God giving salvation to his people is like God conquering Satan, even on his own ground, as it were. God's serpent devours Satan's serpents. In Genesis, the great sea creatures are, in fact, made by God. Luther once said that though Satan is the devil, yet he is still God's devil. Satan is not, in other words, the opposite of God. Satan is the opposite of Michael, the archangel. In fact, it has ever been one of Satan's greatest achievements to make people think that Satan is the equal and opposite of God. You can see this especially in the old saying, Satan votes for you, Satan votes against you, God votes for you, and it's up to you to break the tie. Problem is, there is no tie. From first to last, God has control over the great sea monsters. This means, of course, for us that nothing, by extension, nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. The question for us is, do we believe that? Do we believe in the God who has always saved his people by defeating this great serpent? Do you believe in Jesus Christ who gave the final crushing blow to Satan? We should not believe Satan's lies about himself. He wants us to think that Satan can take us away at any moment. He does not have that power. Only God has that power. So if you're struggling with depression, do not think that Satan can keep you under his thumb if God's intentions are otherwise. God gives the fish and the fowl a blessing in verse 22. The blessing of God is not merely wishful thinking, like we do when we say, I wish you well and be happy. When God blesses, he actually bestows the blessing that he gives. And in this case, the blessing is one of great reproductive powers. Fish are able to reproduce at almost fantastic rates. The slowest reproductive rates for small fish are 7 to 8 in a single spawn. That's still a lot of fish. But the fastest reproduction rates are upwards of 5 million eggs in a single spawn by a single fish. Of course, many of those eggs never mature. Fish are near the bottom of the food chain. Many things eat fish and also the eggs of fish. Even human beings eat fish eggs in the form of caviar. But notice here that God speaks to the fish. And that foreshadows the blessing in just a little bit that God will give to mankind to multiply and fill the earth. Birds are used in sacrifices in the Old Testament. If someone could not afford to sacrifice a large animal, such as a bull or a ram, then 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons could be substituted. And this in turn points to Jesus' baptism when the Holy Spirit descended upon him in the form of a dove in order to anoint Jesus for the substitutionary sacrifice which he was to offer, namely himself. And Jesus is our substitute because we're too poor to offer ourselves. And even if we could, we could not pay for all that we owe. And there are many other uses of birds in the Bible, determining when the flood is over, feeding Elijah, nesting in Nebuchadnezzar's tree, and being of less value than humans, and therefore serving as a perpetual reminder of how much God values human beings.